meeting. Firstly, thank you to everyone for attending tonight. So I welcome the gallery and the press to the council meeting and remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to council's Facebook and YouTube pages. I'd ask everyone to turn their mobile phones to silent mode. Please be aware that a hearing loop is available in the council chamber. Staff members are able to assist you with this at any time during the meeting. Please remain quiet in the gallery so that everyone can hear the meeting. Anyone disrupting the meeting may be asked to leave. I would also like to remind members of the public watching the live stream that a copy of the agenda and information explaining council meetings can be found on the council website. Tonight you will see that we have 22 reports in open council and 3 in closed council, a transparency rate of 88%. I will now ask everyone to stand and I call upon Pastor Norma Kaiser of Turning Point Church, Cranbourne, to read the prayer.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we ask you to give your blessings to this council. Help to guide them so that the decisions that they make might truly be for the well-being of the people of the city of Casey. Lord, I pray that you will be with each one of them as they go about governing their different areas. And Lord, we just pray that you'll give them the energy, Lord, the insight and the discerning that they need, Lord, to help this city of Casey to continue to become and live as a great place for each one of us to be in. We thank you for this. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Norma. Please remain standing as I call upon Ms. Mia Sivarasa from the Casey Multi-Faith Network to read the faith statement.
The Casey Multi-Faith Network exists to promote peace, harmony and understanding, and to do so in partnership with Casey Council and the wider Casey community. We aim to spread knowledge and clarity about what different religions or worldviewers believe, teach and practice. We believe that all the members of religions and faiths have the right to peacefully practice and celebrate their own religion in a shared attitude of friendly coexistence and cooperation with all other peoples. Gracious God, we ask you to give your blessings to this council. Guide us so that the decisions we make might truly be for the well-being of the people of the city of Casey. Thank you.
Thank you much. Everyone please be seated.
Where's that come from?
The City of Casey acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people and pays respect to all elders past and present. We'll move on to apologies. Are there any apologies for tonight's meeting? Councillor Cristani.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that Councillor Gillich and Councillor Aziz is already up there. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Gillich and Councillor Aziz are noted. Any others? Can I have a mover and seconder to accept those apologies, please? Moved by Councillor Cristani, seconded by Councillor Flannery. Is there any dissent? That is carried. Suspension of local law. Is there a mover and seconder to move the suspension of local law until I determine to reapply the local law? I'll move that myself, seconded by Councillor Stapleton. Any dissent? That is carried. First item in suspension of local laws is a celebration of the Timor-Leste Independence Day, and I had some notes prepared for me by David Ellis, the President of the Friends of Amira. Is David here tonight? Thank you, David, for preparing these, and we're going to get everyone connected with the Friends of Amira, including all the councillors, shortly after I read this in front of the Timor-Leste flag, which we have up over here. East Timor Independence Day is celebrated on the 20th of May, next Sunday. The country was colonised by Portugal in the 16th century, but declared its independence in 1975. Six days later, East Timor was invaded by Indonesia and ruled as Indonesia's 27th province. The people resisted Indonesian rule, and this was repressed violently. 100,000 East Timorese died in the conflict over 20 years. East Timor's road to independence was long and traumatic. This important day marks the independence won by East Timor from Indonesian rule in 2002. Following the Indonesian invasion of 1975, many East Timorese escaped and sought refuge in Australia, with many ultimately settling here in the city of Casey. We are pleased to welcome and acknowledge Mr. Francisco Bernardes and his wife, Miss Orete Martins, and their daughter, Miss Sharma Bavida, as representatives of our vibrant East Timorese community in Casey. In 1975, Francisco and Orete sought refuge in Darwin before moving to Perth and then resettlement in Portugal. Under the family reunion program, Francisco and Orete settled here in Casey with their family in 1990. East Timor is one of the world's newest states, faces many challenges. Casey continues to support and contribute to the development of this young nation through our friendship link with the District of Amira. Together with the people of East Timor and our local Timorese community, we acknowledge the significance of East Timor Independence Day next Sunday, May the 20th. And I know there may be Mr. Francisco Bernardes and Mrs. Shana Bavida. Are they here or they were stuck in traffic? They're still on their way? We might hold the photo until they get here. That might be the best. So we'll continue on, and when they come, you'll let me know. Just wave at me and we'll do the photo. Okay, so well done to all our friends of Amira people, and thank you for those notes, David, and Councillor Smith's waving like a goal umpire, so we'll throw over to Councillor Smith.
Oh, can I just say, my connection with Timor-Leste goes back. My first time in Timor-Leste was the week before independence, and what a time to be in that country. It was an amazing period of time, and you had to be out of the country, I think 3 or 4 days before the ceremony. But the people of East Timor in Timor-Leste have always been very opening to people from Casey. I've been there 4 or 5 times. I've lost count. The last time I travelled with a group of students from Glen Eagles College, and that was fantastic to see a country like Timor-Leste through the eyes of young people, and to see them in the schools working and teaching English was fantastic. I also should mention that about a month or so ago, whenever we were in Canberra, I travelled to Canberra with the Australia Day Study Tour students, and we're actually very lucky. We were greeted and hosted by Abel Gutierrez, who's the ambassador to Australia for Timor-Leste. So we visited the embassy in Canberra, and he showed us around, but he gave a very moving talk to the students about the history of Timor-Leste and the relationship between Timor-Leste and Australia in terms of the things that happened during World War II. And if you haven't ever heard that story, it's a really fascinating story. And you know, we owe a great deal of gratitude to the Timorese for looking after the Aussie soldiers. That they hid from the Japanese for a long time and basically saved their lives. We would have had a lot more deaths. And in doing that, they suffered at the hand of the Japanese as well. So it was a fascinating story, and I thank Abel for that. And he's promised that whilst he may not always be the ambassador in Canberra, he hopes that the Timor-Leste embassy will host our students every time they go to Canberra after this year. So I want to thank the Friends of Amira. They do a fantastic job. And when you go to our adopted district of Amira and see the work that the Friends of Amira have done and fundraised for, is just outstanding, stunning. So thank you for all your work.
Big round of applause, please. And David, we'll wait until the other 2 guests arrive, and then we'll get a photo done. So we'll keep moving along with the suspension of standing orders, and I'll go to Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just for the information of our gallery, fellow councillors and officers, thank you very much. We have in the midst in our gallery, we have Jo from the 1st Cranbourne Scouts, and we've got a group of Venturers that have joined with her. Now, Joanne Ryan is a very wonderful leader within Scouts. In fact, I was at a very special day of hers when she received her Wood Badge, which is beads, sorry, which is a very prestigious acknowledgement of great service for the Scouts. And that was a fantastic day, and I know the great work that she's doing in the Cranbourne Scouts and the wonderful Scouts and Venturers, Cubs and Joeys that are part of that group. A group that's growing exponentially, Mr Mayor, and that's not just because of growth, it's actually because of the reputation that this particular club have. And tonight we've got the Venturers here who are doing their badge work, and this is a very important part of what they do. And I just wondered, Mr Mayor, if you would indulge us to invite Joanne and the Venturers up to have a photo with yourself, my fellow councillor, Councillor Rowe, and any other councillors that would like to join
I
us.
invite all councillors up. We're all supporters of the Scouts.
Sure. Okay.
And I possibly need someone to take the photo. No, you can.
And another one. That one? Because it was a terrible sight. There we go. Check those.
Mr Mayor, could I just ask for a round of applause for our wonderful...
Round of applause for the Scouts. Thank you. Councillor Stableton, have you finished?
I have. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. We now will go to Gerard Sholton, who is head of our communications, and we're going to have a look at explanation on the screens of our budget that's about to be adopted and go on exhibition. So I'll hand over to Gerard, who's sitting over the back, over there.
Council support have the video display, Mr Mayor.
Okay.
Eventually. Might need some technical support there. Helgi.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm happy with it. Yeah, yeah, cool.
That's very good video.
No, all good. I knew I should.
Mr Mayor, would you like to do an impromptu stand-up?
Matter of fact,
You'll reenact your...
Jeff, a 10-second bio from each of the officers.
You can sing it?
To initiate an action. Sorry, what do you mean?
Have Francisco and Shana arrived yet? No. Oh. Sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure we're stuck on the screen. We can't get off. Okay. It is well worth seeing. Yes.
I might take my seat, Mr. Mayor.
Where are you going to take it?
I would. I've got a lolly in my mouth, so.
We'll just see if you can reset. If you can reset the screen, we can.
I will. I will move on. We'll do the next bit. I'll now determine the local law be reapplied. Confirmation of minutes. Is there a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday the 1st of May? Moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Flannery. Was there any dissent on that? That is carried. Is there a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the special council meeting held on Tuesday the 8th of May 2018? Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Flannery. Is there any dissent? That is carried. Is there a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the planning committee meeting held on Tuesday the 8th of May 2018? Moved by Councillor Stapleton, seconded by Councillor Rowe. Is there any dissent? That is carried. Is there a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the general purposes meeting held on Tuesday the 8th of May 2018? Moved by Councillor Stapleton, seconded by Councillor Flannery. Is there any dissent? That is carried. We'll move on to conflicts of interest. Does any councillor have any conflict of interest or personal interest that they would wish to declare? I do. In open council, item 6.6 and 6.7. In closed council, item 14.2. Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Items, I don't know why that's not working. Item 6.7 and item 14.2, both I wish to declare an indirect conflict of interest. The class of interest is indirect financial interest, as indicated to the acting CEO earlier today. And my microphone's not working, I don't think.
Yep. And I didn't explain my conflict. It is a direct conflict of interest of financial gain when I was running as a state candidate in Cranbourne in 2014, and I've sent that through to the CEO. Are there any other councillors? Councillor Jackson.
Mr. Mayor, I have a direct conflict of interest on item 6.4, which I've notified the acting CEO of.
6.4. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest that items 6, 7, 6, 6 be considered together, because otherwise you and Councillor Stable will be jumping up and down.
Yeah, what I was going to do was go with those items plus Councillor Jackson's item firstly.
Yep.
So we're all out of the room, then we're back in.
Okay. Happy with that.
Once I go through officers' reports, I'll ask permission to do that.
Cool.
So while we're still waiting, we'll run through those councillors wishing to pull out officers' reports for further discussion. And I'll start with myself, pulling out item 6.1. Councillor Cristani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thank you. I don't think this is working. I'll just be loud. 6.2 and 6.9. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm still on. I don't know what's going on.
That's all that matters.
True. That's not true. Councillor Rowe.
Item 6.4, 6.6 and 6.7.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Smith.
Mr. Mayor, items 6.11, 6.13.
And 6.5.
13?
And were you pulling out 6.5 to defer it?
Yeah, my apologies then. I missed that one.
So you've got 6.5, 6.11, 6.13?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 6.12.
Item 6.12. Is there a mover and are there any other councillors wishing to withdraw any other items? Is there a mover and seconder to adopt the recommendation as listed in the officers' reports that have not been withdrawn for further discussion as follows? 6.3, 6.8, 6.10, 6.14, 6.15, 6.16, 6.17, 6.18, 6.19, 6.20, 6.21 and 6.22. Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Stapleton. Is there any dissent? And that is carried. We'll move to public question time, but I believe we don't have any public questions tonight. So we'll move on to officers' reports. Have our special guests from East Timor arrived yet? No. Maybe someone can just give me a wave when they're here. The 6.1 has been withdrawn for myself, and I'd like to move that recommendation in my name. Seconded by Councillor Jackson. Thank you. I'm pleased to present the City of Casey's quarterly report to the community for quarter 3, January to March 2018. Overall, 86% of our actions for the 2017-18 financial year have either been completed or are on track for completion this financial year. Of the remaining, 11 are slightly behind, still due for completion, 4 have not yet commenced and 6 were not met or will not be met by the target date. The City of Casey, strives to engage the community in everything we do. Significant engagement during the quarter included Community Task Force. The task force was recruited in February to monitor the implementation of the City of Casey's Vision and Council Plan 2017 to 2021. The task force met for the first time on the 24th of March 2018 and will be meeting again in June 2018. Point 2, Commit to Casey. Council's major transport advocacy campaign, Commit to Casey, was launched to the community in January 2018 and was featured on mainstream television and print media. Council is seeking funding commitments from both sides of politics for major projects to fix our roads and extend the Cranbourne Rail, as this will create jobs, improve across access to services to help our community thrive. For more details on the above and other key information for the quarter, the community can download the report from the Casey website or view our community dashboard, which will go live this week. This will be a link to this dashboard on the Casey website. And I just want to say thank you to our officers and particularly Gerard, who's trying to fix things. I can just see him over the back. The Commit to Casey has been a really big successful campaign. Already in my time, I've been here 10 years, we've accrued more in promises from, at the moment, the Labor government to duplicate the line from Dandenong to Cranbourne, and as stated before, beg your pardon? Not a promise. Not a promise. Well, they put it out there, and that's a good start because if we naturally are advocating that the line go to Clyde. As you would have read, the Cranbourne East Clyde area is the fastest growing area in Clyde, and we don't want people to buy a dream home that becomes a nightmare because they spend most of their time travelling, taking their kids to school or going to work or trying to get to the shops and back. If we get everything that we are advocating for, it'll create 18,000 jobs locally in Casey alone, which is billions of dollars worth of money into the economy. So we will continue. We really appreciate the support of all the individuals who have joined our petition to lobby both major parties in this election year, because it's certainly needed. The roads, we need it now, not drawn out over a number of years. So if you go to our website, you can join our petition. And I want to thank all the councillors and all the residents of Casey, everywhere I go, and my colleagues go, when we talk about really trying to fix up our road and rail and bus services, everybody just stands and applauds because it is desperately needed, and we're working really hard for our residents in that area. So I'll move on now. So thank you for that. I'll move on now to 6.2. How are we going with the... We could plug it in now. Well, what I'll do, I need a mover and second to suspension of law until I reapply local law. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Rowe. Any dissent? That is carried. We'll now go back to the budget DVD. predicted growth, we've still been able to continue our strong investment in the necessary projects and services for our community. We're investing more than $120 million through our Capital Works program to build new infrastructure needed for our growing areas, as well as improve and renew facilities in our established suburbs. My fellow councillors and I would like to share with you just a snapshot of the hundreds of projects scheduled across our great city to be funded in this year's budget.
We know that Casey is such a popular place to raise a family. That is why this year we're investing more than $13 million in family and community facilities where local residents can access important services like kindergarten and maternal child and health. This year's budget will fund 2 new family and community centres in the fast-growing area of Clyde, in Calora Park Estate and Remley Estate.
We're also ensuring that our established suburbs don't miss out on receiving quality facilities, and the new and improved Autumn Place Family and Community Centre is a great example of that. This budget funds the completion of this great new integrated facility, and we can't wait to open it to the Dufton community.
It's also important that local families have great parks, playgrounds and open spaces where they can spend valuable time together. We'll be investing more than $1 million to improve a range of play spaces across Casey, including Stage 2 development to further enhance Livy's Place Playground in Lyndhurst, a project very close to my heart that allows children of all abilities to play together.
We're also investing in a range of great projects where people can get out and about and enjoy the great outdoors. A great example of this is the creation of a new recreational shared path for cyclists, walkers and joggers near Troops Creek in Narre Warren.
We'll also be creating public parkland inspired by the 1,000 Steps called Bayview Park, bordering Narre Warren North and Harkaway. From football and netball to soccer, cricket and softball, Casey is sports mad. So it's not a surprise that we're investing more than $25 million to renew, upgrade and construct new sports and recreation facilities across our city. One of those projects is a new district-level soccer pavilion at Jack Thomas Reserve in Narre Warren North to help Casey's largest soccer club to keep up with the growing numbers.
Lawson Pool Reserve in Cranbourne is also set for a major revamp, with upgrade and extensions planned to the current pavilion to cater for AFL, cricket and the new soccer participants. This budget also invests in the continued development of the Hunt Club District AFL and Cricket Reserve in Australia's fastest growing suburb of Cranbourne East.
There's a range of improvements on the cards for Sweeney Reserve, which is home to many different sporting clubs. Both the softball, baseball, cricket and football pavilions will be refurbished and upgraded, and the soccer pavilion will also be extended.
We'll also be continuing our significant improvements and adding additional netball courts at Olive Reserve in New Memory, along with the renewal of the Waratah Reserve soccer pavilion. This year's budget also invests more than $25 million in improving Casey's expansive road and path network to support our residents to get around and enjoy all these great facilities. Our biggest road project is the construction of the missing link of Glascox Road from the South Gippsland Highway to Narre Warren Cranbourne Road, creating an important east-west route for Casey residents.
2 other major road projects in the south of Casey is the construction of Bellardo Road from South Gippsland Highway to Five Ways Road in Clyde, and Smith's Lane from North Road to Browns Road. We'll also be improving the streetscape through Truden Township for the local residents and to make it an inviting stop for visitors passing through this lovely coastal town. This year, Council is also continuing to invest in our digital transformation so we can leverage technology, innovation and data to meet the demands of our large growing city into the future. Council looks forward to bringing these projects to life as we work to deliver on our vision to create Australia's most livable city. Well done, Gerard. Round of applause for Gerard. And our budget won't be long before it's put out on exhibition, and people will have a chance to comment on that and ask questions and present if they wish to. So everyone will be consulted in that regard. Whilst we're in a suspension of local law state, I believe our special guests have arrived. So all of those who are in the East Timor Friends of the Mirror group, we might get you out the front, please, in front of the flag, and councillors as well, if you'd like to come out. We'll get a photo in front of the the Timor-Leste flag, remembering that their Independence Day is on the 20th of May, today being the 15th.
long enough to...
Might have to lay it deep.
Swear. I can't get you more length. Too wide.
That might be. Sorry.
You'll have to go a long way back.
Thank you, David, and all the members of the Timor-Leste Friends of Amira group, and keep up the good work. Thank you very much. I'll now reapply local law, and we'll come back to item 6.2. Councillor Cristani.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation on 6.2 Family Violence Prevention Strategy. I'd like to move that in my name.
Seconded by Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you. I am pleased to present the City of Casey Family Violence Prevention Strategy for adoption by Council. The development of the strategy is a culmination of work undertaken by Casey over a 10-year period, including the national award-winning Promoting Peace in Families project and the Challenge Family Violence project. Throughout this work, Casey has positioned our efforts to address the issue of family violence using a primary prevention approach, as this is where local government has the greatest impact. Further to these two initiatives, over the past year, work has been undertaken to establish Casey as a community leader in the prevention of family violence. I would like to highlight the process by which a strategy was developed in partnership with our community. Developing a draft strategy based on statewide and regional priorities for approval by Council last November to engage community consultation to take place, engaging an expert panel of sector leaders and agencies to review the draft strategy, holding a community consultation forum on International Women's Day in March 2018 to assist with developing actions and priorities. I took place in this, and that was an incredible day, well worth it. Strengthening partnerships with community groups and agencies including police, family violence service providers, health agencies and faith communities. Casey is now well placed to further this work through the creation of an action plan which will enable Council to attract external funds and resources to undertake this important work into the future. The adoption of a strategy is also an important advocacy tool to argue for Casey to have its share of response services for those in need. I commend the Family Violence Strategy to you for consideration and adoption. And I just want to note that this is something I'm proud of. I think this is great, the work that you've done, Ms Val and Nick and your team. Obviously, we're a piece of the puzzle, and this issue hasn't gone away, and it's just this first step, I believe, in a long road. So I look forward to seeing the outcomes that occur as a result of this. Mr Mayor, with your permission, I perhaps ask if Ms Bell wants to make any more comments towards this to add to tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cristani, and through you, Mr Mayor. This is a very exciting evening for both the City of Casey and also for my department. This has been a very long journey for the City of Casey in terms of work in the family violence prevention space, and for us to be able to come to the position now where we're seeking to have a formally adopted family violence prevention strategy is the culmination of many years of work for the City of Casey, but it's also the beginning point for our organisation in terms of the future direction for us as well. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak.
Thank you, Ms Bell. So I'd like to put that to the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cristani. Are there any questions or dissent on the matter? That is carried. Thank you. Just before we move on to the next item, I just had a note that Councillor Aziz's absence tonight. He's asked for a leave of council for tonight, so a leave of absence for his leave tonight, so I'll move that. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Flannery?
To raise it as item of urgent business, Mr Mayor.
Yeah. I'll just get some...
Through you, Mr Mayor, my mic's not on, so I'll just talk this way. The resolution about the apologies granted Councillor Gillich and Councillor Aziz a leave of absence as part of the apologies earlier in the evening.
Well, that's already happened, so someone just passed me a note. That's okay. It's done. All right, we'll move on to 6.4, Councillor Rowe. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, conflict.
Conflict of interest. Can you state what your conflict is, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I've got a direct conflict of interest in relation to this one, which I've advised the acting CEO of by email prior to the meeting.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation in my name.
A seconder? Councillor Smith.
Right. Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is in relation to a motion moved on the 17th of April in relating to conferences available for around Australia and overseas for World Cities Summits. And Mr Mayor was requesting that the officers undertake a review and make recommendations as to the appropriate events that the relevant portfolio holders, being myself, Councillor Aziz and Councillor Jackson, might attend. Subsequent to the report, and mentioned late in the report, there's been an invitation received by Councillor Aziz for the World Cities Summit in Singapore, and that was one of the preferred options for the overseas portion of an international exposure that would give to the Council and its Smart Cities projects. In the recommendation, Mr Mayor, it suggests that whilst we have a funding set aside in the relevant budget, that because of constraints that we would restrict it to two councillors attending, the Cities Leadership Smart Cities Domestic Exchange, which is a Northern Australian 5 cities exchange of portfolio holders, and could be attended by two councillors, and it would allow the inclusion of the World Cities Summit in Singapore in the event that one councillor pulled out. I'm on annual leave over the period of the summits in Australia, and on that basis I'll be withdrawing, which would mean that Councillor Aziz and Councillor Jackson will be able to attend inside the existing budget.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Do we have any questions or dissent on the matter? Councillor Cristani, question or dissent?
Question. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just note in the wording it says these funds to offset the cost. Does that mean it's not fully covered under the current funding?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the current funding has provision to fully fund the domestic tour. If a councillor withdraws from the domestic tour, then we have funds available to fund the cost of the World City Summit. So there's no change to the overall budget. In fact, we come in under what we were planning to spend with this arrangement.
So I just want to clarify, Mr Mayor, sorry. You're saying we withdraw from the Smart Cities local or interstate, that would fully cover the Singapore trip?
No.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's correct, yes.
Okay.
Any further questions?
I'm not sure.
Happy?
Not sure.
Not sure?
Not yet.
Come back to you. Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Look, I understand where council want to go with this by going overseas, trying to be world leaders in what we do in the city of Casey. But as I said, I'm going to dissent purely on the basis, I've got nothing against any of the councillors, but purely based on what I was elected on, and that was no overseas travel.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Cristani.
Sorry, just want to confirm, is this Singapore We're the World Cities Invitation? I'm just confirming that. Is that right?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, that's correct.
Yep.
Any further questions? Because
I
there's
will
no one else.
dissent, Mr Mayor.
You're dissenting? Okay, you don't have to talk to the dissent. You,
No, I won't
okay.
dissent.
Mr Mayor.
Any other? Oh, you would like to? You get a chance to. Oh, there was dissent. Sorry, Councillor Smith, as a seconder, you wish to reserve your right, or reserve your right?
Thank
Councillor
you, Councillor Smith and Mr Mayor. Just by way of clarification, the amount of money being spent in Singapore is significantly less because Councillor or Mayor Emeritus Aziz is being invited to attend on behalf of the organising committee in Singapore. So it's actually a recognition of his leadership role in smart cities and technology.
So can I just jump in? So they're paying all his expenses except for the
with
FX?
the exception of $3,000, Mr.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith, you wish to speak? Councillor Cristani, anything else to say? You've just spoken, Councillor Rowe. You don't have to sum up. I think you've summed it up pretty well. So we do have dissent, so I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation in front of us? All those against? That is carried. Thank you. 6.5, Councillor Smith.
Mr Mayor, in Councillor Aziz's absence, I'd like to ask...
Sorry, Councillor Smith, my mistake.
Okay.
Ask Councillor Jackson to come back in.
Oh, okay, sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, Councillor Aziz was to speak on this. I think we were jointly to speak on it. In his absence, I think we should defer it to the next meeting, if that's all right.
Moved by Councillor Smith to defer it to the next meeting, seconded by Councillor Stapleton. Is there any dissent on the matter? That is carried. I have a conflict of interest in item 6.6 and 6.7, and that's a direct conflict of interest for reasons I've given to the CEO, and I briefly stated before. Councillor Stapleton?
Sorry, I was just talking.
Sorry. So I'm going to call for... You have a conflict in 6.6?
6.7, Mr.
6.7. Okay, so you're going to sit this one. I might call for a temporary chair, not Councillor Stapleton, because she'll be leaving for the next item. Moved by...
Mr Mayor,
nominate?
can I nominate Councillor Smith as Deputy Mayor to take the chair?
Seconded by Councillor Cristani. Any dissent on that? So I'll vacate and hand over to Councillor Smith.
Okay, let me just get myself in order. Where is it? Got it there. Oh, it's here anyway. Okay, so it's 6.6 to do with the Clyde Development Contributions Plan. Have we got a mover? Councillor Rowe, seconded.
Thank you, Mr
Councillor
Mayor.
Jackson.
I've moved the recommendation in my name.
Yep. Sorry, I jumped ahead of myself there, didn't I? So, Councillor Jackson, you happy to second that still? Thank you. Do you wish to speak? Is there any dissent? Should ask that first. No. Do you wish to speak? No. Okay. Then I'll put that to the vote. Or if there's no dissent, I declare it carried. Thank you. 6.7, is that correct?
Yes. I move that
Just
in
wait
my
for it to
name,
come up.
Mr Mayor, but
Thank
there
you.
is an amendment to clause 2.
Sure.
I can't read it with or without.
And she's left the room. Councillor Stapleton has left, so thank you.
Yes, that's as agreed, Mr Mayor. Acting Mayor.
So moved Councillor Rowe, seconder. Councillor Jackson. You wish to speak to it?
Yes,
a call
thanks,
for
Mr.
dissent? Yep.
Mr Mayor, today marks the end of a very long journey for me. In 1988, I became a councillor on the Shire of Cranbourne. And during that period of time, our then Director of Planning, or whatever the term was back then, I don't recall, decided that we should include Cranbourne West in a industrial zone. That was something that I, as the local councillor, objected to, and continued to hold that objection for the whole period that I was in council and for the 10 years that I was in government, and worked actively where I could to influence the change of that beautiful area of Cranbourne into residential and what it should be. But it wasn't until many years later, Mr. Mayor, in my first term of in council at Casey, that there was a request by the landowners for council and government to consider the rezoning of this land to residential. It's a process, Mr. Mayor, that has taken me nearly 30 years to get to the end of. And tonight, by us adopting the panel plan, panel hearing report, we are entering the final phases of achieving that lifelong goal, long part of my life goal. But it's also in recognition, Mr. Mayor, of those residents in Cranbourne West, some of who were aware that they may be buying into an area that was going to have either light industrial or smaller factories or whatever in the area, who were not aware that in fact it was almost a mega factory site. And if we're driving down Western Port Highway today and we look to the left in South Dandenong, we'll see the largest factory constructed in the area for some period of time. And DELWIP and various other government departments, Victorian Planning Authority, believe that if you build it, they will come. Nothing is further from the truth. There were multiple offers of the land to many large industrial groups to develop factories to bring jobs. In nearly all of those cases, Mr. Acting Mayor, the site was rejected. And why? Because abutting the factory sites was residential land. And connecting roads, which would have had or seen industrial traffic travelling through residential streets. And much to, I'd say, joy is now, but back then much appreciation for my fellow councillors in adopting the cause of attempting to get this area rezoned. And then we ended up with a group of residents with the not too flattering name of SCRAG, which Save Cranbourne West Residents Action Group, and that's what it spells, so that's what they get called, who got very active and started a local movement to have that land and support the rezoning of that land. And after a visit to one of my former parliamentary colleagues, the Honourable Richard Wynne, and I must thank Richard, who supports a reasonable football team as well, he saw merit in what we were proposing. And he sent after some degree of public
Councillor
consultation.
Rowe, we need an extension of time.
Yes, please.
So do you wish, how long do you think?
Oh, 15 minutes.
15 minutes? Okay, extension of 2 minutes. Councillor
Thank you,
Rosario
Mr. Mayor.
Jackson.
Look, I'm back to thinking that I'm standing up in Parliament in unlimited time and I'm filibustering. But we had long periods of public consultation. I've got to thank the council officers for that period of public consultation and beyond, where we ran events in parks in the local area with plans explaining what was to be proposed. And the officers were there on a weekend providing that information to the public, and thank you very much for that. It then went to the planning panel. The planning panel saw wisdom in the decision of my fellow councillors to allow this land, or recommend that this land be brought forward for public consultation, for rezoning. And the panel report, Mr. Mayor, made comment about the quality of information and the submissions that were put up and the validity of those in them making the decision. And so much so that they've suggested that the Kelly farm to the north of this lot be included or be, if supported, in the event that they come and ask for rezoning, as with a change of zoning for the Avid land, which is on Evans Road. So, Mr. Mayor, this is a wonderful day. It's a wonderful day for the people of Cranbourne West. And as the officers in discussions and Mrs. Ward, we were discussing, and she said, you know, you did want this to be an iconic subdivision. And with people like Dackland now being involved in this subdivision, and the quality of subdivisions that they have delivered across Victoria, I'm sure we are going to have another showcase. And Mr. Mayor, in closing, you know, recently in discussions with Dackland, they've expressed a desire to be involved in our Smart Cities program and projects and make this one of the smartest suburbs in the city of Casey.
Okay.
So, my fellow councillors, I thank you very much, and on behalf of the people of Cranbourne West, I thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe, is there any dissent? There being no dissent, I'll declare that item carried. Thank you, everyone, and we'll ask the Mayor and Councillor Stapleton to return.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. We'll now move on to item 6.9. Councillor Cristani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation in my name.
Moved by Councillor Cristani, seconded by Councillor Rosario.
My fellow chairman of the board of chairman of the committee of conservation. I'd like to present to you tonight the notes on this, but I believe we have some photos to go up. Some of the work that's been done by the officers, so perhaps we can have a look at those while I'm talking. The City of Casey is home to diverse, significant and highly valued biodiversity assets. The natural environment in Casey, however, is threatened and degraded due to past agricultural land uses, significant population growth and increasing development pressures. Casey currently has less than 7% of original vegetation cover remaining in the city. It is important to preserve this. Casey's 29 bushland reserves cover approximately 93 hectares. Bushland reserves are valuable as they help provide an insight into what Casey looked like before settlement. They are homes to rare species. They provide valuable respite spaces for the busy urban world. This is why they need to be proactively planned for, managed and protected. Casey's biodiversity strategy sets objectives and actions to plan for, protect and engage and connect and restore biodiversity and the natural environment in Casey. The vision for the strategy is to deliver a green, sustainable and resilient natural environment which will implement the Council Plan vision of creating Australia's most livable city and the strategic objectives Council is seeking to protect the environment. Consultation and community engagement activities were innovative and thorough. The feedback from the community helped shape the development of the biodiversity strategy. Workshops, pop-up sessions and surveys were conducted with the Conservation Advisory Committee, key stakeholders and Casey residents. Community feedback was overwhelmingly positive and supportive of the biodiversity strategy, the City of Casey's work in the environment space and the natural environment in Casey. The support for the strategy reflects many years of work by the council officers to engage with the community on environmental issues and improve Casey's natural environment from the Dandenongs all the way to south to Western Port. And as we see on the photos there, the beautiful pictures, our biodiversity department is actually engaged and with the younger environmental conservatives. Perhaps, Nicola, would you be able to fill us in a bit more about what happened that day and anything else you wanted to support the strategy? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thanks, Councillor Cristani. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we really wanted to use the opportunity to speak with the younger generation. A lot of what we do in the environment, we don't see the immediate benefits of, and the team worked very hard with 20, 30, 50 years planning ahead. And really the work that we do is really about protecting our natural resources and the environment for our youngest Casey residents and our future residents. And consistent with our council's approach to community engagement and a lot of the work that's been done out of the children's services area and engagement in that regard, the team went out and engaged with some of the kids at the kinder, and it was really lovely just to see their expression of what environment means to them and help us to test to make sure that what we focus on as adults and professionals is actually what has meaning to them as youngsters. There was a lot of other engagement that was done with the Conservation Advisory Committee, obviously, and just getting out and about and listening to residents' aspirations for Casey's environment.
Thank you, Officer Wood. Councillor Cristani, you're up and down. Councillor Rosario.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's now our council is aware. Number one, the council officers have done an amazing job with this. So I've got to congratulate them, Nicola and the team. For the Conservation Advisory Committee, they were also consulted as well as the children, and there was a lot of consultation that the officers did. And it wasn't just a matter of putting a piece of paper in front of someone and say, answer these questions, that's it. There was engagement, because this is not everyone's cup of tea, but they went to the groups who would appreciate this most, and they approached it in a way that made it interesting, Mr. Mayor. So unfortunately, I didn't put up pictures today, probably should have, but at Conservation Advisory, we were approached in a way that we had stickers, and we put down the stickers on the things we thought was most important to us as individuals, and then we tallied that up and saw where the priorities were as a whole, Mr. Mayor. And through that process as well, and again, re-engaging to drill down into further details, we were able to add some value, further value to the document, because it was really quite well thought out and comprehensive. But one of the things that Conservation Advisory, and I think the feedback did come back, was about protecting our biodiversity as well. So it wasn't just a matter of, and Councillor Cristani touched on all this, yes, we should protect what we have. We need to respect what we have as well. And I would be terrified that in 20 years' time, if children were drawing pictures of buildings instead of trees and open spaces because we didn't have any in 20 years' time, I'd be horrified by that. But the main point is, Mr. Mayor, that we have to protect what we have today. So we want to work with community, private enterprises, but we also want to practice what we preach as well about protecting our habitats. And through that process, in 20 years' time, we hope to retain and to make sure that those resources last for hundreds of years to come. And if we don't do that now, it will never happen. And if it doesn't happen, we will never get it back. It's very hard to get something back once you lose it, and you can't recreate nature easily. So I've got to say, the work that you've done, the approach that you've taken to make it fun, interesting, engaging, I think we can all appreciate that. And I want to thank you as well to the officers once again, because you can't pay for that sort of passion. And for the community as well, our volunteers, the children, you can't pay for that sort of feedback, that sort of interest. And that's an amazing community partnership, Mr. Mayor. I just really wanted to highlight that. I think this is an example of what works well when it's approached in this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rosario. Are there any other questions or any dissent? Then that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to 6.11, Councillor Smith.
Mr Mayor, I'll be moving the recommendation on page 61.
Seconded by Councillor Rosario.
I don't intend to speak very much on this at all. I felt we discussed whether we would pull it out or not. I think it needed to be pulled out in recognition of the residents and the people who have submitted objections. This council has a record in recent years of not supporting poker machines in general, but each case is considered on its merits, and the report clearly gives reasons why we shouldn't be supporting this one as well. So I thank the residents and the people who did submit, and commend the report to councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Are there any questions or dissent on the matter? And that is carried. Thank you. 6.12, Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move this recommendation in my name.
Seconded by Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Mr Mayor, I'd like to thank the council officers and all the councillors involved in input into this particular report, but particularly the officers. And I'd like to highlight some of the opportunities that are outlined on page 65. Now, I'm aware that some of our gallery participants don't have a hard copy agenda, and for Joanne Ryan, I'm sending you links so that your venturers can look at what I'm referring to at a later date, and I'm really sorry that you haven't got one to look at. But we are live streaming as well, and you can replay that. If I could talk just briefly to the real-time data, the building energy productivity, solar and storage at scale, I think some of the opportunities are great. And as you read through the report, you can just see that even though it is only 3 pages, there's a lot of detail in there and consideration that's been given. And some of the points I'd like to point out, and firstly to state that Council embraces an innovative approach to curtailing an expectation of sharp and sustained increases in utility costs, particularly costs relating to electricity consumption. And we all know that that's already hitting our homes as we speak, our businesses, and also our community organisations. So this is a really important step that we're taking today. Multiple workshops have been professionally managed and included some of the most strategic external minds on this subject in Australia. This identifies short, medium, long-term outcomes that will seek to not only counter increases in electricity costs, but ensure we have the most efficient council-owned facilities that reduces costs, which will ultimately benefit the Casey community. And this means that we keep the hire of our halls down and the use of our facilities, and we put our hard-earned rates by our residents to the best use. And my final point, if you would, Mr Mayor, is to say that there's a great opportunity for Casey to share an aligned funding approach, which with external partners that can deliver the most sustainable of our electricity and broader utility options. Delivering these results in partnership and via co-funding model is an opportunity that will greatly benefit Casey Council strategically and through a cost-efficient, sustainable position for the future. So I would like to thank the council officers, directors, and all involved in, especially the workshops. That sounds, quite fascinating. So this is really, really important for our way forward. I love the approach, and I would just like to commend this recommendation to the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stapleton. Any questions or dissent on the recommendation? That is carried. Thank you. I'll move on to considerations of officers' reports of committees. Is there a mover and seconder to receive? Sorry.
13.
Oh, did I miss one? Oh, my apologies. Councillor Smith.
It's all right. Used to it. Okay. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Okay.
I'll be moving the recommendation with one additional dot point, and I apologise for not getting it in, but I've just finished writing it. That's the problem. Dot point 3 becomes council rights to both the member for Narre North and the Liberal candidate for Narre North, seeking their support and commitment for the duplication of Hallam South Road and the removal of the Hallam Road rail crossing to occur as soon as possible. And with that, I put that motion.
Councillor Rosario.
Councillors, you might be aware, because I think you've all been subject to some emails from residents down there in Chess Hunt Drive in Hallam. Councillor Rosario and I have been liaising with them for quite a while. Mr Philip Romani has been a fantastic representative of the residents down there. We had an evening meeting, on-site meeting there, and we thank the officers for coming to that, and they took a bit of a beating, I suppose, but in the end, I think it was quite a good discussion, and everyone left feeling that they'd had their say and they'd been heard, and tonight's report is a continuation of that. The residents are still not quite happy with the report, but they've decided to accept it because 2 speed humps were better than none, and they would really have liked 3. There was even a suggestion that the residents would like Chess Hunt Drive to be completely closed off. Well, we just weren't going to entertain that one. Their issue is that because of Hallam South Road and the problems with traffic there and building up of traffic, that Chess Hunt has become a bit of a rabbit run, and they want to be able to stop that. Councillor Rosario and I and the officers who were there witnessed the enormous number of cars going past, and it was about 6 o'clock, 6:30 or something, I think, at night. An enormous amount of cars going through, using it as a rabbit run, but also the speed. We found the speed, it was quite amazing. They showed us a video of a recent car accident on the road where a car speeding along actually hit another car. It stopped, and we thought, oh, this is all right, they're going to get out of the car, and they just took off and drove straight off again. So there's a bit of a bitter taste with the residents there about one of their local residents having that damage done to their car. We told them on the night that probably the reality is it might take 2.5, even 3 years to get this programmed in, and I thank the officers for looking for opportunities to get it done faster than that. So point 2 is a real opportunity to get this done at a much faster rate, because the problem is now. It's not in 2.5 years. It's right now at this moment. So ideally, it would have been great if we could see it, being done now. But we're realistic and know that we're part of a long line of other. Every one of you in your wards would have similar issues, I suspect. Part 3, the residents have asked for Part 3 because they believe that the duplication of Hallam South Road will really make a big impact on the cars coming down their street. And although we are writing to the member for Narre Warren North seeking his support and commitment, well, the government has announced that they will duplicate. They also wanted us to ensure that no matter who's the government after the state election later this year, that commitment would be continued. So that's the reason for Part 3. So I commend it to officers. The residents, as I said, they're not completely happy, but they're willing to accept that we are making a real effort and try and get something done as quick as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Are there any questions or dissent on the matter? That is carried. Thank you. I will now move to considerations of reports of committees. Is there a mover and seconder to receive and note the record of the Assembly of Councillors as listed? Moved by Councillor Flannery, seconded by Councillor Rowe. Any dissent? That is carried. Petitions. Are there any petitions tonight? No petitions tonight. Notice of motion 3225. That's mine. I raised this one. I'll move that in my name. Seconded by Councillor Stapleton. The reason I've raised this is pretty self-explanatory in the wording there. There are many, many hundreds of people downstream from Botanic Ridge who will end up having a lot more water on their property. It will affect a lot of people who have horses, because you can't keep horses on damp ground because of seedy toe and abscesses and all sorts of other foot diseases. I have spoken with Officer Ward about a better solution, channeling the water in a different direction towards the training complex, which would use the water. it ends up, there's already a drain that runs from the corner of Browns Road and Craig Road through a number of properties heading down towards Tooradin. This pipe is extra to that drain. It's not taking the place of the drain, it's actually extra to it. So even in the last 3 or 4 years, the volume of water heading down that way because of our buildings, our houses, has increased by about 5 or 6 fold, and the flow is the same, but the volume's 5 or 6 times higher. It finishes up in a dam near Fisheries Road. Then from the dam, it just spreads out and goes through everybody's farm, heading down towards the coast. And this is one of the legacies, I guess, of rapid development with housing, and a lot of the residents downstream and even the residents upstream are very sympathetic to the landowners who have no choice. Melbourne Water are an authority and we can't tell them what to do. But we can advocate very strongly on behalf of many thousands of residents who are sympathising or are involved with this extra water coming through their properties, and it will change the lifestyle completely, the values of a lot of properties as well, with the inundation of extra water once it hits this particular farmer's dam and then emanates all the way down and finds itself going down towards Tooradin. This is going to be a problem of the future. So wherever we can stop the enormous flow of water, particularly a number of years ago we had 3 1 in 100 year floods in 2 years. And you can imagine the volume of water heading down towards the coast and the damage it does. So I'm hoping that, I know a number of owners have already been to see Mr Jude Pereira, the local member, about this, and I'm hoping that the first option of having a holding plant and channeling the water somewhere else where it can be used can be installed, rather than putting it through a pipe into someone's dam and where it goes is willy-nilly, and if it affects your property, well then too bad. So we'll continue to support the advocacy to Melbourne Water to find solution 1, I think they had it down as. Officer Bull, would you like to comment on that, or are you happy just for me to keep speaking? And that's why I've put it up. I've put it up because of the number of phone calls I've had from people who will be affected by a huge amount of water than they normally have going through their properties, and I think it's a fair... One thing we do have as councillors, we have an ability, all of us, to put ourselves in the shoes of someone else, and you ask yourself, if I was on one of those properties and all of a sudden the volume of water went up by 100%, I wouldn't like it very much, because it would affect the animals, affect my livelihood, affect the flood overlays on the property, the whole lot. So if there is another alternative, a better one than that one that is suggested, and I think that Melbourne Water should do that one. So I put it to my fellow councillors to support me on that. Are there any questions or dissent on the matter? Then that is carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Smith, 3227.
Mr Mayor, I'll move the recommendation. There is an alteration. We're taking out the words after multicultural officer, so the first dot point ends at the after multicultural officer. And I thank officers and councillors for their advice on that one. So I put that motion.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Rosario.
I had to remind him. Councillors, I won't speak too long. I don't think I need to, because we're going to get a report back, so that's the main thing. There'll be subsequent debate afterwards. But lately, in this building, in this room, and also out in the plaza, there have been some fantastic events recently that were organised by outside groups with a multicultural flavour. The Lafayette Festival a couple of weeks ago had, I think it was in excess of 3,000 people here. It was just an enormous festival, and it was a Mauritian-based organisation, and boy, those Mauritians know how to party. And it was a great event, and I know a lot of people in this room were in attendance. The last week there was an event here to launch a multicultural tapestry. Again, well attended, lots of multicultural performances. It was a huge hit. But it became evident to a number of people who said, why isn't council organising these events? Why isn't council organising some multicultural events and assistance to the multicultural community? And that's based on the fact that we have such a huge multicultural community in terms of people coming from born in other countries, people of non-English speaking background who have come to Casey and made Casey their home, who I certainly don't expect them to forget where they've come from. They have or will become Aussies, but they should never forget their heritage. And I love enjoying their concerts and their cultural dances and performances and the food that they put on offer, as I think everyone in this room has in the past experienced. So I'm asking for what's a way that we could engage an officer in to look after that area of council's operation, considering the large numbers of population in our city and large number of visitors, and in particular because of Bunjil, we've got an opportunity with the venue that's already been well utilised, but could be so much more utilised as well. So I'm seeking a report, and we'll have a further debate in June, I imagine.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Are there any questions or dissent? Question?
Just unaware, Mr Mayor. Councillor Smith, I was just wondering where you said a multicultural officer, because we've got over 1,000 people employed by Casey Council, and probably many of them will be of different nationalities. Maybe we could have more than one, because we could utilise their talents as interpreters and get the message across what we need to celebrate these special occasions.
Yep, sure. And I'd also see the role of that person, although I don't want to preempt anything, but I would imagine they'd have a role in advocacy for our ethnic community and refugees and all the people that come under that banner.
Thank you. Any other questions? No dissent? Any questions? That is carried. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
I shouldn't clean out my office because I found a sheet of paper the other day from Robin Zeddens to remind me that this is something we've been talking about for a long time. So I'm putting this motion. Happy to speak to it if I get a seconder.
Seconded by Councillor Rosario.
This council has quite a number of committed residents and even people from outside the city who sit on our advisory committees, and we have quite a few of them. I was very lucky last night to chair the Access and Inclusion, and I've only just joined that committee, but what a fantastic group of people they are, and some of the decisions and comments and contributions made last night was fantastic. I chair the Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee. Equally, you know, the commitment of those people is outstanding, and if we had to pay for that sort of advice and services, it would cost us a lot of money. It's been brought to my attention that we have these advisory committees. They don't know what each of the other committees do. In fact, last night when I went through the different committees that we have, I think there was a bit of surprise about how many we might have and the diverse range of issues that they address. So this idea, and thanks to Robin, was to bring those committees together for a recognition function for the Mayor and the councillors to recognise their efforts, but also to allow them to network with each other. But I see there's a really important role in giving them an opportunity to promote each other and talk about what each committee does. So maybe each committee would nominate one or two people who would do a short presentation during the evening on what they do. And Mr Mayor, I think hopefully you'll be quite happy to host that, and I think I can't imagine any councils in this room that wouldn't want to be there, because it's that we know our advisory committees are so important to us. So I commend this to councillors and hope that we can get this going as soon as possible. And I thank Ms Zeddens for the initial idea.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Love to be a part of it. Thank you. Any dissent? Questions? That is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is mine, Reclink Australia. A number of years ago, Reclink came along. I'd like to move that in my name. Seconded by Councillor Stable, and thank you. Reclink Australia came along and presented about running businesses themselves and making money to turn back into engagement, but they're in a completely different space now. They are actually working in communities right across Australia, funded by the federal government and our own state government, in involving people who are disengaged at home in a number of activities, mainly through sport and recreation, but also working with families. And this new model they've rolled out is got a strike rate of over 50% employment for people who at one stage are sitting at home, disconnected, all of a sudden they're connected in activities, introduced to people from business, and all of a sudden they've got a job. So it's a fantastic program, and I personally love to see it in Casey. So that's the aim of bringing them out to see what it would take to have a Casey-wide program like this running. What they do is they're not their own organisation as such. The 35 mental health organisations we have, they would touch base with all of them and asking them to support them in what they do with the people that they look after. So it's a bringing together of everyone, all our organisations together to not miss anybody who may be disadvantaged or disengaged, and give them every possible chance to be anybody they can possibly be. So it's so well done that it's been funded very heavily by the federal government in certain parts of Queensland and by the state government in certain parts of Victoria, and it's working. They talk about a social dollar value, and a university, the state government put in about $500,000 for a university to study for every dollar put into the RecLink program, the saving of $9 in preventing mental health programs and other mental health issues was proven by the university study, and it's the highest social dollar value recorded that's been measured. So it is a big program, and it's really helping people who are disengaged get back connected and get a job and get back doing engaged in the community. So it's about having a listen to what they have to say and maybe talking about how we could get something happening. But it gives all my colleagues a chance to ask questions about how it all works, any concerns they have, and we'll see how we go. But no harm in talking. As I said, it's working great in parts of Australia, so let's see if we can have a talk about what it is, and if councillors decide to, see what it takes to get it happening in Casey. Thank you. Question?
Are you aware?
Are you aware?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I support this. And a bit of an are you aware about RecLink Australia, Mr Mayor, for those in the chamber that don't know. They in fact have an annual Lawyers v Barristers football match every year, which I've participated in, and so I've...
Did you get a game?
I got a game, Mr
What
Mayor,
position?
and it was 3 years ago on the forward pocket, and I've...
Forward pocket, right.
I tore my right ankle, and I've never played since. But I'm very much looking forward to this and getting on board.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Forward pocket. Did you kick a goal?
Somebody's
no,
pocket.
You didn't. Okay. Councillor Rowe. Did you get a game at Essendon?
I doubt it. Not even now. I was just wondering how many pockets regularly that...
I think we'll leave that alone. He's a lawyer. We'll leave that alone. Any questions or dissent? Then that is carried. Thank you. Councillor Rosario.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move this with... I'm actually going to amend the entire motion just to simplify this before I get a seconder, please. So I've just got some wording.
No, we'll change it before you get a seconder.
Yeah, thank you. Can we just remove all the wording and we'll leave it at point 1? I'm just going to say in point 1 that council officers brief councillors on councils... I'll wait for you to catch up. Council officers brief councillors on council's online broadcasts and use of council chamber technology to date. Point 2, please. That a report come back to a council meeting in June regarding possible improvements on council's online broadcasts and use of council chamber technology in meetings. And just before we solidify that, is June enough time for officers to come back with... Because I'm happy to move that out if it gives you more space to actually be able to...
Yep, through Mr Mayor,
yeah.
maybe probably if the meeting is in May, briefing in May, maybe probably to push the report through to July to give plenty of time.
Happy to do so, Mr. Dalton.
Changes might need to be made.
Thank you for the advice. Happy for July to be that, and that is the motion, Mr. Mayor, and I'm happy to get a seconder, please, if anyone wishes to support.
Right, you happy with that? So we get a seconder, seconded by myself, and you can. Where you go?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I raise this because Council has committed to broadcasting our meetings online and to share with the community the really good things that happen in our meetings. And there is a number of really amazing things that we do here. It's not always the most exciting, but it's important to the future of the city of Casey, to its present as well, that we address things. And so I raise this purely because I think we can acknowledge that sometimes the broadcasts haven't gone particularly well, but there are some really amazing positives that we can take out of this moving forward, because we are in our shakedown year, Mr. Mayor. This is the first year in Bunjil, and this is where we iron out the bugs for the next 30, 40, 50 years. So it is an exciting year. So what we will do here, Mr. Mayor, and what I'm proposing is that councillors get briefed on this technology to see how we're going and how we're tracking, and what we can certainly look forward to in the future. And I'm very excited. Council officers and I had a bit of a talk before this, and there are some really terrific ideas and positive things that I really want to explore with the council officers and my fellow councillors. So with that said, Mr. Mayor, I will leave it there, but I am looking very much forward to this report and what it has to say about the future of our communications with our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rosario. Is any dissent on the matter? And it's carried. Thank you. Councillor Rosario.
Should have just kept standing, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I'd like to move that in my name, please, as it is.
Seconded by Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have some photos. Hopefully they are able to be shown. And if we can please cycle through one at a time. So just want to explain a few things. Thank you. We'll start with, this is picture number 1, Mr. Mayor. So here's the issue. Pound Road and Shrives Road. So I live in Hampton Park. I'm one of the people who drives along this, as do many thousands of people, tens of thousands even. So here is where the problem begins. I have received many community complaints from people who live along Pound Road, as well as people who visit and frequent the area as well. And the reason is speed. The speeding of motorists put other people in danger. So what these symbols here represent on the map, so I'll start with the left and work my way around. So the reason why I'm proposing that we advocate, and I strongly believe this, we need to advocate for the speed limit to drop to 60 is, number one, the very far left there, that is the turnoff from the South Gippsland Highway onto Pound Road. That crosses over a bridge that where the South Gippsland Freeway is under, and then it comes into Hampton Park. There is a rise, so as your car drives along, you go up, and you don't have any visibility about what's on the other side until you start coming down again. So visibility is one of the big things I think is a major problem with Pound Road. As we move further down, that triangle, Mr. Mayor, is where the cars come off the freeway. And look, I've seen people go at full speed. If the light is green, they don't slow down. And they shouldn't be doing that, but unfortunately that is the behaviors that do happen. But that is another point there where if someone doesn't see the traffic as they're coming up, they could make a mistake, go through it, and have an accident. The square that we're seeing there is actually a really hot spot for dangerous, near misses, we'll call it. It's very dangerous because there are near misses. And I'm going to give you a recent example, Mr. Mayor, that absolutely made me jump up. So I've received, and I'm not going to mention who has said this to me, but it is someone who is very close to this situation. A young schoolgirl was crossing at a school crossing there. So that's our only school crossing down at Pound Road. And the school crossing guard was in the middle of the road to slow down traffic. And a truck came over the rise because there is a rise right before you go down into the crossing. So visibility is really not very great until you get down and downhill. And he saw too late that the crossing guard was in the middle of the road. This was a man in a truck. He slammed on the brakes and veered off the road, missed the girl by 2 meters, took out one of our crossing poles that we put the flags on. And that crossing pole is still down, by the way. I just drove past it this morning. It has not been repaired because this was a recent incident in the last I'm not sure when the flag went down. It could have been in the first incident or the second, but 2 weeks ago or 2 or 3 weeks ago, the same incident happened again in the same place. Another truck did not see the crossing, slammed on the brakes, and again missed the same girl. For some, I feel really bad for her. The same girl had the same situation happen to her twice, nearly again got collected. Now, safety is our paramount importance, Mr. Mayor. That our council believes in that. We practice that. And to have our crossing guards at risk and to have our pedestrians at risk and school children, that really shames me to see something like that happening. And what I'd like to do is do something about that. I believe that a speed decrease to 60 would allow traffic to be able to have more time to slow down, to stop. I've had reports from other residents about cars going through the crossings while the crossing guard was there. They didn't slow down, they didn't stop, they kept going. This isn't the first report I've had, but this is the first time I've heard of someone nearly getting killed twice. So just moving further down as well, just the oval there, that is where I believe the proposed pedestrian crossing signalised will be going. Councillor Smith and I have been advocating for that for years. Councillor Smith did it long before I got into council, and I picked up and carried that torch with the community 6 years ago. And we finally, after all these years, are going to get a crossing, and a council officer report came back earlier. That's really positive and great. And I don't think council officers will have the answer tonight, but I don't know whether that crossing, school crossing, will then be moved to the pedestrian crossing for more visibility and safety. It makes sense to me, but I'd be interested to hear more about that from officers at some stage. If you go further down as well, Mr. Mayor, there is Hallam Road. Can we go to the next picture, please? And I'll be as quick as I can, Mr. Mayor.
On 2 minutes?
Can I get another few more minutes? Is that all right?
On 5?
Can I?
I'll move 5.
Thank you so much.
By Councillor.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
Thank
you so much.
Do you need 5?
I don't normally
I'll
go...
move 5,
thank you.
seconded by Councillor Smith. Any dissent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't normally
Carried.
go on this long,
Go
but
on.
I am very passionate about wanting to safeguard our community, both motorists and pedestrians. Okay, so this picture here is representative of, so that's Hallam Road there where the hexagon is. And Hallam Road is actually 60 kilometres. It used to be 80. After the duplication, it dropped down to 60 permanently. So why didn't it go back to 80? I believe it was a matter of safety. 60 is actually working really well. People are slowly driving along, enough to stop if someone jumps in the way or whatever it is, if a pedestrian's crossing the road. Moving further down, that oval there is because Pound Road is still 70 kilometres as you go through the intersection. That 2 lanes...
Can I just ask you a question?
Yes.
Has 70 been done away with?
Sorry?
Hasn't 70 been done away with? So
Done
70
away
would
with.
have to become 80 or 60.
I'm glad you've raised that, Mr. Mayor, because part of my research, and I remember the same thing from 2011, there was a report that was done by Vic Rhodes, I believe it was, or initiated by the minister at the time. It said that the government would look into every single 70-kilometre crossing on a case-by-case basis to see if it needed to be reduced to 60 or raised to 80, depending on that road and the dangers around, or any potential dangers around that road. In 2015, that was rescinded by the then government and so that has not come to fruition. I thought it did, but apparently did not. So putting all that aside for the moment, I think regardless of that, we still need to advocate for this. So those 2 lanes in that oval, Mr. Mayor, is actually 2 lanes that then become a single lane that carries on at 70 kilometres all the way down Shrives Road, which is in that straight line. It becomes Pound Road to Shrives Road. Pound Road continues if you turn right at the 7-Eleven, which is where the 3rd circle is, and that will carry on at 70 kilometres down that way. That is a very hotspot, dangerous area. That's where the new roundabout is going in. Councillor Smith and I think a number of others would have preferred a signalised intersection for more safety, but roundabout will be safer than what it is now. And part of advocating for a slower speed limit is that people will approach that roundabout slower, not speed through it at 70 kilometres. Now, I don't know if, what the plans are in terms of duplicating, whether that road will be duplicated all the way to Pound Road, but even if it is, even if it is, Shries Road is still a single road up, as well as Pound Road. And can we go to the next picture, please? And I'm just going to cycle through this quickly, and then I think I've made my point. That's the post there that was run over by the truck when they slammed on the brakes. That's lying on the ground at the moment. Next picture, please. This is, so I've just turned the camera around. This is the view of the road as cars come down. So you see where that red car is? That's a car actually coming downhill. So that's not a straight road. And take a look at the driveways as well. So you've got cars coming over here and people coming out of driveways with low visibility. Can you imagine if you're closer to the top of that rise, but you can't see the cars coming? You have to be extra super cautious. Next, please. This is the intersection where Councillor Stapleton got stuck doing her walk for disability. And this is where the new pedestrian crossing, I think, is envisaged to go because the seniors have been fighting for it. This is very dangerous because you can't make a right-hand turn. No one gives you way, speeding motorists. It is really bad. Next picture, please, and we'll just cycle through this quickly. This is going past the Hallam Road intersection, and now this is the one, the 2 lanes on Pound Road that become 1 lane that goes down to Shries Road. Next one, please. You can see the number of cars as well that were there. Keep going, thank you. You can start to see some of the houses as well that have to come out into this very, single lane and have to navigate the speeds. Please keep going. And some more examples of that. One more. This is the turnoff where the new roundabout's going. So this is actually an old photo now. The new one has got a lot of roadworks and things like that. But that is where, again, the speeds go on 70 down Shries Road and then become 60 later on. I'm proposing that becomes 60 all round, and down one more, and then I'll wrap up.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Next picture, please. And then this is Pound Road after you make the right-hand turn at 7-Eleven, and you can start to see it gets a bit more rural in terms of the roads and stuff. It's not sealed. Keep going, please. And that's a very well-used area there with the dental clinic and chemist. And next one, or I think that might be it. And that's a car coming out as someone's coming up at 70 kilometres an hour. That's pretty dangerous. So that's, look, the point I'm making, Mr. Mayor, is that
time's up, mate.
I think that we can do better, and I'd like to advocate for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or dissent on the matter? Question or dissent?
Just a question. Councillor Rosario, part of that road, Shries Road, runs into Narre Warren South, which is my ward. It's interesting that we bring this road complaint up, but the thing is that we got a petition from the residents that complaining about the traffic flow, because I know on multiple times that during peak hour times in the morning and the afternoon that the traffic doesn't go 80 kilometres an hour, it doesn't go 70 kilometres an hour, it goes around about 60 k's, because I've travelled down it many a times. Either way, the roundabout is definitely an issue, and I want it rectified, but look, I think that it should go to the general public of the area to find out whether we fix up the road. Look, I think safety is of concern for, especially if the same child has been nearly knocked over twice, but anybody that's endangered by crossing a road is not acceptable. But I'd actually like to see whether the petition that go in that that the residents put in the complaint rather than council. We can advocate for it, but I'd like to see if what the rest of the residents say. But Pound Road, going up to Cranbourne Narre Road, I've travelled down it many a times. I know there's police cameras there, or camera-operated vehicles there in Pound Road, and also the Pound Road going towards Cranbourne Narre Road. And look, I've never come across it. No, as I said, I live in the area, but I'd like to be convinced that of different circumstances that we need to reduce it to 60 k's. But I know for a fact that morning peak and afternoon peak, I don't know what happens during the day because I'm at work. Morning peak, afternoon peak, I know that people don't travel at 80 k's an hour. It's an impossibility because of the traffic flow. So, but I'll leave it at that.
If I can respond.
Yes, you can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, thank you, Councillor Flannery, and I do acknowledge that what I've covered does enter into your ward as well, because we are neighbours in the border. What I want to say, though, is that the reason why I just suggested 60 around was just to be very consistent in terms of that stretch of road. But look, I do acknowledge that in peak time, traffic is slow. I get that. But it's not peak time I'm necessarily worried about. It's the times when it's not peak where that speed and visibility issues may cause problems. Look, I have seen near misses in the past along that road. Thank God nothing's happened. And I'm not saying I've seen a lot because I don't always drive down that road. But look, it is feedback that has been given to me, and rather than trying to circulate a petition as well, I've decided to jump on this as an initiative. And as I said, we're advocating, but whether or not Vic Roads agrees to that, because Pound Road is now Vic Roads Arterial Road, I believe, if anyone can confirm that. I think they took ownership of that a couple of years ago now. Oh, Mr. Griffin, yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, both Pound Road and Shrives Road are under the management of Vic Roads.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So that's why it's advocating and not just asking council to change speeds. But look, I take your point on board. I feel very strongly about wanting to slow that traffic down a bit. I think 10 kilometres, actually I'll make one point and then I'll sit down, Mr. Mayor. And it's a statistic from the Vic Roads. So Vic Roads say that if you are in a 60 kilometre zone and you're travelling 5 kilometres over the speed limit and you slam on your brakes, a person going at 60 kilometres, when they're stopped, someone travelling 65, you'd still be going at 32 kilometres at that point in time for just 5 kilometres over. So if we're reducing it by 10, I think we're giving people an opportunity to really drive safe, still get to where they need to go. There'll be a few seconds, it's a few seconds they lose, but we don't lose, or we don't risk people getting hurt. Thank you.
Councillor Zara, just a question. Would you contemplate after Vic Roads putting in, you also write to the Minister for Transport, the Honourable Jacinta Allen, and also the Minister for Roads, the Honourable Luke Dinella?
I'm happy to entertain that, Mr. Mayor. And I'm happy to entertain any suggestions that add value to the motion, because it is about safety, and I know you're all passionate about the same thing.
I just think it's better to write to the ministers themselves as well as Vic Roads. They're a autocratic.
Can we add another? Do we need to add another?
An organisation,
no?
an arm of the state government. The Honourable Jacinta Allen, Minister for Transport, and the Honourable Luke Dinella, Minister for Roads.
Should we write to the shadow as well, or?
Please.
We'll just say to the
to the
sorry,
relevant shadow ministers.
Sorry. Amanda might have something.
Yeah, well, I won't ask for leave. Thanks, Mr. Dalton, because I think Councillor Stable wants to say something.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, could we just make that the Minister for Public Transport, because that's transport sort of covers roads and public transport, but this is the Minister for Public Transport. Thank you.
Well, Luke Dinella lives in Casey, doesn't he?
No, the Minister for Public Transport.
His
He's
office
Minister
is
for
in
Roads.
Casey?
He's the Minister for Roads. Yep.
He never lived here.
Never lived here.
Sorry.
He lives in Fitzroy.
No, I meant his office is in Casey. But
we could have
so hang on. So you're adding in Minister for Public Transport. Okay, sorry. Public.
Jacinta Allen.
Okay, so Councillor Zara, are you happy with that? The way it is?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, anything that gets the word out there, I'm happy with.
Can I have leave of council to make those changes? Okay, thank you. We have leave of council. So, are there any other questions or dissent on the matter? Then that is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to urgent business, and we do have some items of urgent business, so I'll go to Councillor Saray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And maybe just tell us why it's important.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Why it's urgent?
Sorry, it's urgent because of public safety, and it will be referred to the Community Safety Committee that's meeting next Tuesday.
Okay, moved
So timing.
by Councillor Saray, seconded by Councillor Cristani. Any dissent on allowing it into urgent business? And that is carried. You may
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've sent
want to
the
move a
wording
recommendation?
prior. Yeah.
We'll just give councillors a chance to read that firstly, if you don't mind. council need any more time? No, so that'll be moved by Councillor Saray and seconded by Councillor Jackson. You may now present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been contacted by the local residents in this area in Berwick about the constant littering that happens with some antisocial behaviour that's happening over the weekends, and where they are not getting visits from the police when they call them. So we really need to, that's why I would like to write to the police and let them know that this is on a constant basis, and we'd really love them to go down and have a look at what's happening. There seems to be a lot of drug taking, drug exchanges. In the mornings, like I said, there's just litter everywhere, and it's needles and macas, wrapping, and you name it. I've got hundreds of photos that the residents sent me and videos of them hooning in this area because it's on a hill. So this hotspot seems to be constantly, for about a year now, about a year and a half. I've only been contacted in the last few months. So we just want to escalate this and take it to the Community Safety Committee that's meeting next Tuesday to see what else we can do, but also if there's anything else the council can do in terms of that road, and perhaps even looking at the traffic issues that are happening around school times as well. So there's a lot of issues that are happening, so we just wanted to make sure that these get done in a timely manner. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or dissent on the matter? Question?
Actually, it's are you aware? I fully support Councillor Saray and Jackson in this one, because this is something that happens across Casey as well. But when it happens in the way that it's happening now, I can absolutely sympathise. The one thing I will add, and this is just more for the general public to be aware of, because there was a comment about the police maybe not attending, is that if it is an immediate threat, Mr. Mayor, they should call 000. Because 000 has to be responded to by the police. If you call the police station, they may not necessarily respond to it because they're not actually obligated to do so, unless it's the 000 call. And you know how busy the police can be, so and limited resources. So I can understand that. And number two, for the residents as well, if it is something that's happened after the fact, you witnessed it, you have some information, please call Crime Stoppers, 1-800-333-000, and that gets recorded in a database where the police access.
What was that number again?
1-800-333-000.
1-800-333-000. Okay,
Yes.
right.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah, look, and the final point on that, Mr. Mayor, is that the reason why police encourage that to happen after the fact, because they can't do anything with 000 if they've already gone, these people have gone. But what they do is they collect these reports, and individual reports themselves may not lead to a conviction. But what the police have said to us is that sometimes someone makes a report that they weren't sure about, but they've done it anyway, and that report was the missing link in a case that they're trying to solve. So any information that comes through from your residents, Councillor Saray and Councillor Jackson, that could help to catch people who are doing the wrong thing. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rosario. Any other questions? There's no dissent, I don't think. Any other questions? Then that is carried. Thank you very much. Another item of urgent business, Councillor Cristani. Why is it urgent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's urgent because it deals with a deadline, funding deadline that's coming.
Okay, can we have a seconder? Moved by Councillor Cristani, seconded by Councillor Flannery. Is there any dissent on allowing this item into urgent business? No, that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I moved this in my name and...
We'll get a seconder.
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Cristani, seconded by Councillor Saray.
We'll give
You may now present.
Thank you. Perhaps if give it just me for my for my fellow councillors to have a read of that and introduce. I might just start introducing if that's all right. Would that be, is everyone happy with that? Okay. The Aboriginal Gathering Place opened in July 2016. It is a dedicated space for our local Aboriginal community to drop in, engage in programs and activities to connect with services and with their community. The model of the Gathering Place enables culturally appropriate outreach services that have been proven to generate better health outcomes for the Aboriginal community than mainstream service models. The gathering place is owned and operated by the City of Casey, who fulfil a number of back-of-house responsibilities. These include funding operational costs, providing performance management and supervision supports to key Aboriginal staff, providing the Department of Health and Human Services with performance and accountability data and helping to develop priority action plans. Decisions concerning the gathering place programs and activities are predominantly determined, led and facilitated by the Aboriginal staff who have strong linkages to Casey's Aboriginal community. Since the opening in July 2016, the Aboriginal gathering place has consolidated its operations, growing a range of programs and volume of programs that are offered. The programs range from youth groups with a youth group with 25 to 30 attending per week, youth morning program with 10 to 15 twice a week, arts and craft group and gardening group up to 22 a week, youth homework group with 20 to 25 a week, gardening group, as I said, children and play group with 10 to 20 a week, and a popular holiday program with 45 per event. Funding provided to council to deliver youth and health programs is in the range of $130,000 per year since 14-15 for the youth program and $75,000 per year since 13-14 for the health program from the Aboriginal gathering place that will cease on the 30th of June 2018 as the state government is seeking to transition to a new 10-year Aboriginal health, wellbeing and safety plan Korin Balak Juk. As part of this plan, changes to funding models are being considered to strengthen community-controlled Aboriginal organisations. The Aboriginal Youth Regional Coordinator provides before-school sporting programs that include breakfast and attendance at school, Dandenong and District Aboriginal Cooperative Limited youth groups, Victorian Aboriginal Child Care Agency Kids Club, and backup support to other groups and programs at the gathering place. The Aboriginal Health Coordinator provides a program of health promotion activities including running weekly events, special promotions, linkages and health organisation. Council officers have been in positive negotiations with DHHS to reinstate funding to Council to continue delivering these programs while more time is sought to scope and establish this new funding model. Noting it is now 7 weeks before funding and program ceases, Council needs to formalise its advocacy with a Minister and state members to seek a further extension. If funding is not extended, a minimum of 10 hours per week of operations at the Aboriginal gathering place will cease, profoundly impacting on the Indigenous people who currently access services. It should also be noted Council has increased its investment to Aboriginal services in 1819 with a new position included in the 1819 proposed budget to deliver homework and school holiday programs for Casey's Indigenous youth. The City of Casey is home to the third highest number of Indigenous people in metropolitan Melbourne. Some positive outcomes that has proven this works is that in February 2018, the Casey Aboriginal Gathering Place was recognised by the Principal Aboriginal Advisor of DHHS as the perfect model, which they hope can be replicated across Victoria. The Gathering Place was a finalist at the 2016 LG Pro Awards in the Outstanding Program category and was featured as a case study in the Victorian Aboriginal and Local Government Action Plan 2016. Councillor Flannery and myself, we attended a barbecue lunch late last year for Christmas actually, and I saw firsthand the supportive and connective space created for our Indigenous brothers and sisters. I met a young lady who was just about to leave for a basketball opportunity in Canada, and we were able to celebrate with her in this. Others were celebrating their upcoming school year and time with their family over the holidays. It is a positive environment and I was so impressed. I was just so grateful to be there. Today, I was there and I had an impromptu basketball shootout with our local Indigenous artist, Doug Smith. I try not to knock him over, Mr. Mayor, just so that you know. Apparently, Doug used to play basketball. Doug also showed me his latest...
Do you need a couple of minutes?
Just 1 more minute and I'm done. 1.5 minutes.
Well, move 2 because that's slow.
Okay, sure.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Rosario. Any dissent? That's carried. Carry on.
Doug also showed me his latest artwork, finished a month ago. It was a dragonfly with his fame-dotted work surrounding. It was beautiful. Perhaps we could consider Bunjil Art Gallery as having a local Indigenous art display. I think we might have had some already, but it would be great to have Doug's art and other art. The Hall of the Gathering Place is lined with his work and other local Indigenous community artwork. Is this Aboriginal gathering place a success? Yes, it is. And the state and federal government can both share in the success by being part of it, and they've already. This is an invitation to the state government to continue with us on this journey of success. It is crucial for our Indigenous youth and families to be able to have this service. It works, and we really need the support. Thank you.
Councillor Rosario.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm on a roll tonight. Fully support, and this is my Are You Aware, Councillor Cristani with this one, because this facility, we're very fortunate to have it in River Gum Ward in Dufton, because it actually borders Dandenong as well, and there's a large Aboriginal population nearby. But the one thing I wanted to say, in addition to everything Councillor Cristani said, is that they really appreciate that gathering place. The joy that we saw when we launched it, to the times that we visit them to see how things are going, that facility looks just as good as it did when it was open. And I have a lot of respect for the people there and for the council officers who've been hired to work with these groups, but as well as the ones who support them in the background as well. And I know Joe Small was a big part of that back in the day, as well as our directors, and we had such a great turnout. So congratulations to council officers as well for making that a success, working with the community, and for the councillors who haven't been there yet, because I know Councillor Flannery has been there, and Councillor Cristani, and Wayne and myself as well, and Councillor Stapleton, you were with us for the launch, is, have a look and see the facility for yourself. It turned a derelict building into an amazing place and safe place to gather. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rosario. Is there any dissent on the matter? Oh, sorry, Councillor Stapleton, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry. Can I go to Councillor Flannery first? Sorry, he was first, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Stapleton. Look, I just want to congratulate Councillor Cristani on the words she had to say. Look, I've been fortunate to be up there at the Aboriginal gathering place with Councillor Cristani, and I was up there with her children when they were having dinner at the barbecue. I'd also like to thank Joe Smale and Michelle and all the team that have done a lot of work contributing to the running of the gathering place. One of the gentlemen up there, Leon, who I think he's moved into a different area of the gathering place, he absolutely blown me away with the dedication that he put into the children there, and the support that he puts in. He goes out on weekends, he takes them to the football and gets them involved in different activities. And it would be a shame to see this place go to waste, and we don't get the funding for these young children. Look, everybody has a culture, everybody has a diverse background. We need to keep this alive and well. If not for me, for our grandchildren and our grandchildren further on. Look, I do have a sister-in-law who's Aboriginal, and my nephews and nieces, they've got part Aboriginal in them, and this is why I got on the advisory committee, because I think that it was an insight that I wanted to learn a little bit more about their background and get an understanding of what the Aboriginal community can bring to the city of Casey. And what I've seen is well and truly gone in leaps and bounds. And look, anybody that just lets this slide and we can't get funding, well, I'll be absolutely devastated.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to preface my question with congratulating Councillor Cristani on this item of urgent business. This is a 7 to 8 year dream realised. I remember being on the Access and Inclusion Committee all those years ago, and we had a representative from the Aboriginal community come with a bucket of money to be able to help realise a gathering place, and boy, was that a bit of a project in finding the right location. But the council officers have done such a fantastic job with this, and so have the members of the Aboriginal community as well. They've really made it their own, and I was at the launch. I was really proud to be there, and I love to know that things are going well. We just need to keep that funding going in order to ensure that those programs continue. I just wondered if Councillor Cristani might consider a third dot point, and that is a report come back to council, and perhaps by a date, an appropriate date, maybe in the next... I'm not sure what the cut-off date is for the funding, but if I could put that forward.
Thank you, Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, that's an excellent idea. Can I just put over to Mr Coldham to suggest a date, and thanks.
Through you, Mr Mayor, perhaps July?
Thank you.
By July.
So, in July, so not by July, but in July, yeah? So I'll leave it up to yourself. Thank you.
Councillor Flannery.
Sorry, just one more question, or one more.
Are you talking about changing this?
No, I'm not about
Well,
changing
can I ask
that.
for leave of council to make those changes? That's good. Now we'll come back to you.
Sorry,
Okay.
thank you, Mr Mayor. Just one thing about the funding. Look, it is appropriate that we get it. It will be embarrassing if this doesn't get up and it fails getting funding, because here we are in a beautiful building called Bunjil, Aboriginal gathering place, and if we do not get the funding, well, it's going to be an embarrassing thing for me to keep on coming here to council when it's when we represent the Aboriginal community
Is that a
under
point of order?
Bunjil.
Sorry.
No, we'll let him finish then.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not a point of order.
I was
No.
almost a point of order, no, but I think you've a right to say what you have. Mr Mayor, if I may just reply, are you aware that this is a positive discussion that we're having with the state government, because we are putting in funding as well. However, this is recognised that it needs to be state and federal funding because of the nature of the programs. We can't bear the cost of that because of the nature of those programs. And so that is why I wouldn't be embarrassed, but I would still want to put forward our best foot to advocate on their behalf. They're going through a review. They're looking at remodelling into a 10-year program, but we don't want to get lost in that space between now and when that 10-year model happens. So that's why they have to go through their due processes, and we respect that, but we're just diplomatically and positively putting forward. I know what you're saying, but I still want to just make sure that we're being very diplomatic with the way we approach this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cristani. Is there any dissent on the matter? That is carried. Thank you. Another item of urgent business, Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Can you outline the
reason?
topic and why it is urgent?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The first item of urgent business that I have is urgent because of timing in order to get a report back to council. Hang on, yes, got that right.
And it's relating to trams.
Relating to trams.
Okay,
yes, that's
thank
right.
you. Moved by Councillor Stapleton, seconded by Councillor Smith. Any dissent on admitting it into urgent business? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Thank you, fellow councillors. Just 4 points up here for you to consider.
Do you want to move these?
Yes,
We've
sorry,
moved
I'd
it
like
into
to move
urgent
it.
business.
Yes,
Now we
in
need
my
to
name,
move this.
thank you.
And seconded by Councillor Smith again. You may now proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. While my fellow councillors are reading the items, I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Aziz in this. A couple of years ago, he raised an item, a notice of motion requesting that we commandeer a couple of trams and place one at Livy's Place, which is the All Abilities playground that desperately needs a cafe, and at our regional playground at Casey Fields. Since that time, on Sunday night, I saw on TV a clip where they talked about there's about 134 trams that are available to communities, and I rang Councillor Aziz and he was very keen to raise this tonight, but unfortunately as he is unwell he can't, and he's given me his blessing to raise it on his behalf. The trams can be used for a number of things, but there's some really great opportunities for council, and I will forward on, we did some workshopping with a number of councillors and happy for other councillors to buy into this, but we talked about maybe requesting 10 trams because we can see so many wonderful opportunities. Now I know Akuna Park Men's Shed, for example, they're very interested in a tram where they can actually set it up as a mini tram display, so they'd have that within the tram, they'd restore it. We've got Casey Fields, as I mentioned, a cafe desperately needed there. Livy's Place, a cafe. The Cranbourne Casey Men's Shed, they'd like the project of restoring a tram, keeping it on site as a workshop for not only their men's shed but the 200 people with a disability who are at that centre. Wilson Botanic Park, putting it to them to see if that could be a great feature for a cafe. My Unifarm, I think Councillor Smith's made some inquiries and I'm happy for him to talk about this afterwards. They're very interested in placing a tram there for a cafe. Cranbourne Botanic Gardens, something we need to approach them about, but they could have their Friends of Cranbourne Botanic Gardens run that cafe, for example, and raise funds. There could be the possibility of Frog Hollow Reserve. I know there was always a discussion about a cafe required there. The Hampton Park Men's Shed, again, Councillor Smith has spoken to them, and I believe that they're supportive. And the old cheese factory, and that's one that Councillor Aziz put forward as well. This could be an historic vehicle located on an historic site that could be used as a playground or part of the playground, or as a cafe, or even an art gallery, and that's something we haven't thought of. The purposes for this are just so boundless. There really is a lot of opportunities, but we've got some specific things that we'd like to put forward to the council officers for consideration. And in the report that will come back at the next council meeting, they will also give us their views if we've missed any opportunities or they think it might be better utilised. There's a number of groups that are really keen, in principle, to assist with the restoration of these trams once acquired. And I might add, they're actually either going for nothing or a very, very small amount, I think $1 or something, depending on how the group applying for it are classified. Now, Akuna Park Men's Shed, Cranbourne Casey Men's Shed, there's a possibility of Cranbourne Men's Shed, but also Endeavour Hills Men's Shed, Hampton Park Men's Shed, the potential of Berwick Woodworkers TAFE. Some of those have agreed already that they would love to be part of the restoration of these trams, and the others we need to contact. Now, the applications open on the 28th of May, and where I see the real benefit, Mr Mayor, is if we're going to run an enterprise out of these trams, for example, like a cafe, wouldn't that be fantastic to hand that over to a community group that are either on site or one that is a good fit for that, so that they can run the cafe and they can raise funds at the same time. It might even be a combination of community groups, because running a cafe can be over a long period of time, so they might have different rosters. I see this as a wonderful community development and a great fundraising opportunity, as well as enhancing the features within Casey. It would be a real, we'd put that on the tourist trail for sure of the Casey Kidney Tourism Board. So, Mr Mayor, I'd like to put this for you and my fellow councillors, and hope that you would support this item of urgent business.
Thank you, Councillor Stable. Any questions or dissent on the matter? Councillor Flannery, question or dissent?
Question.
Okay.
Councillor Stubben, I just want to ask, what about if we took on the possibility of the 10 trams, whose cost would it be to bring the trams to all the different areas or community groups, and would you know exactly what the cost would be for transporting them?
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. I would imagine that the report would reflect this. That's the suggestion of our acting CEO, and I appreciate his guidance on that. He suggested that we have a report prepared, and I imagine that would be in it. But we could, again, look at some innovative ways. Maybe the state government have got some ideas. They're the ones that are advertising. They might have some creative ideas, but I'm sure where there is a will, there is a way.
Mr Dalton would like to make a comment.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to the locations that have been suggested, that Councillor Stablen just suggested, there is a little bit of work involved in mapping out what may be consequences of putting trams on some of those sites. The applications, I think, are due in by the 8th of July, thereabouts. 6th of July, I've just been advised. If we could have some more time to report back to the council, that would be appreciated, just to make sure that we do our homework well, so that when applications are made, the council understand clearly where they can be located and what they can be potentially used for. There's a few groups stakeholders that we need to consult with in the preparation of that report. So we'd be suggesting the first meeting in June, if that was possible. Sorry, second meeting in June.
Would you be happy to make those changes, Councillor Stapleton?
Still give us time to apply.
Second meeting in June. What was the cut-off date, Mr.
The applications need to be in by the 6th of July.
Okay, yep. Lovely. Thank you. That's terrific.
So
Thank you.
can we make by the second meeting in
June?
June?
Great.
Okay, can I have leave of council to make those changes? Good. Councillor Saray was next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just had a question with the 10. I would hope that if they refuse the 10, they would at least give us 1 or 2 or 5, or is that going to be reflected in like the letter or the application or the, I don't know if that goes to Mr Dalton or Amanda or, yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Saray. I think we could itemise things in priority order. Or preference order. That's a very hard thing when you're talking about community groups and sites. But leaving that to the council officers means that we've got a really informed response in that area. So if we can do it in some form of priority, that would be fantastic. Good suggestion.
Councillor Smith, are you indicating you've got an item of urgent business, or you wish to speak on this matter?
A question on this one?
Okay.
Council's aware that in 2006, I think Mr Dalton might be the only one that was around the table in those days, we applied to the government for some of the fish from the Commonwealth Games. And I remember at the time there were a lot of people, including officers I have to say, who were against it. You know, why would we want to take these things, you know, they're rusty things and whatever. We spent quite a bit of money restoring them and installing them out the front of the Casey Ark and Tooradin. And look at what they've become. They've become iconic features of those areas. And these trams are iconic in their own state. And imagine if we could get some of these in some of the locations in Casey, and it would be such a boom for the organisations that might be able to take them on. But I'm really pleased that the men's sheds seem to be pretty keen on the restoration work. And it might even be that they will do that even if they're not going to be the recipients of them.
That's right.
I think particularly the Hampton Park group see it as a real good project, but also they're about to open up in a facility fairly soon that we know from day one we knew that it was going to be too small with the day they open. This gives them another opportunity to have the tram as extra storage or workspace, meeting place, that sort of thing. So I'm sure the other groups will come up with some fantastic uses.
Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you. Our councillor's aware, and thank you, Councillor Smith, for your support on this. The same with the elephants. If you remember, there was an elephant walk that started in Melbourne that then ended up in the zoo. And the elephants were then auctioned off. And I did put it forward to the council officers and they laughed. But as it turns out, the elephants that went to different municipalities throughout Victoria have now got such increase in tourism and visibility. So I support that completely. I think this tram idea, I'm so excited about it, and I really want to see how we can make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stapleton. Are there any dissent? That is carried. Thank you. Councillor Smith, you had an item of urgent business. Can you outline the item and why it's urgent?
Mr Mayor, it's in relation to appointment of councillors as delegates to a committee.
Mr Mayor.
And why is it?
Councillor Stephen had 2.
I can go after Councillor
Oh,
Smith.
sorry, you had 2. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'll go after Councillor Smith.
All right, we'll come back to you. Is that okay? Thank you. Go,
So
Councillor
it's in
Smith.
relation to a request for councillors to be appointed as delegates to an organisation, and it's urgent because they want it in place as quickly as possible before the next meeting.
I move by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Rosario.
And the motion would be that councillors...
Is there any dissent on that? And that is carried. It's now entered into urgent business. Away you go.
The motion would be that councillors Rosario and Smith be appointed as delegates to the Dubden Show Committee, and I'll talk about why and the importance of that.
And we just moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Rosario. Okay.
Can I just, before we get a leave of council, it probably should be prefaced by that councillors Rosario and Smith, at the invitation of the Dubden Show Committee, be appointed, so after Smith, at the invitation or at the request of the Dubden Show Committee, be appointed as council's official delegates. If I can get leave of council for that, would be great.
We've got a leave of council. Good, that's in.
I'll be quick. The Dubden Show, if you've not been there, councillors, and I know many of you have, but probably a lot of you haven't, it's a huge event, one of the biggest events in Dubden. 2 years ago, 20,000 people turned up at Myuna Farm for the Dubden Show. Last year we had a little bit less than that because we didn't have any rain, but we had wind, and that kept people away. But the show was still a resounding success and made some money, not as much as they had hoped for, but it actually does cover its cost, and it's hosted by the Moyuna Farm staff and team there. Their support is just fantastic. The idea of the show is that it's a low-cost alternative to the Melbourne show. It's held during the time of the Melbourne show, and you can come there as a family. The rides are subsidised by the show committee, and you can buy a ticket for your kids to have unlimited rides for a pretty reasonable fee. So it's a really popular day out, and we get nothing but positive feedback from the community that attend. The show's been going for 14 years. I've been involved with most of them. Councillor Rosario, certainly since he's been on council, I think, has been involved in all of them. We are not just attendees at all the committee meetings, but we're also active volunteers on the day. Councillor Rosario, you'll see him running around with his vest directing traffic and doing all sorts of stuff. And I run the stage, which is fantastic for me to be involved. And the local performers who do it for nothing. No one gets paid. So it's a pretty important fact of that one. The committee have asked, could we be appointed as official delegates? And I think part of the reasoning for that is that we then don't have a conflict of interest when decisions that might need to be made by Doveton Show about the Doveton Show come to council, because at this stage we would probably have to leave the room as we are volunteers of the organisation. That may not be the case, but I think that we just wanted to tidy that up to make us official delegates. We're there anyway. We go to the meetings and we attend the Doveton Show and everything involved, and I think to make us official delegates is something the show committee would like.
Thank you. Any questions or dissent on the matter? Then that is carried. Are there any other items of urgent business tonight, councillors? Oh, sorry, Councillor Stablen, back to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. And it's actually urgent due to extreme impact on commuters on the Cranbourne line.
And it's to do with the train, or just you state the item? Is it
Sorry?
rail or road or?
Rail.
Rail, thank you.
Cranbourne line,
Okay,
sorry,
thank
rail.
you.
Yep.
So moved by Councillor Stapleton, seconded by Councillor Ablett. Any dissent on it being moved into urgent business? No, that's carried.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Mr
Would you
Mayor.
like to put up some recommendations and then we'll get...
Yep, we're just getting that up now.
Yeah. Moved by Councillor Stapleton. And
And seconded by...
we'll just wait for a moment. Moved by Councillor Stapleton, seconded by Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. And we can take the urgent part out, just leaving the wording, those two other paragraphs. Thank you. Great. Terrific. Mr Mayor, this is what I'm about to introduce to Council is just something that would be long-standing. For those who look at the Lynbrook Residents Association Facebook and a number of others, they would know of the constant feedback that we get from really hard-working residents who are just trying to get from A to B, get to their place of work, get home to their families, get home to their volunteer committees, and are constantly frustrated with just so many issues. I had a call from a lovely gentleman this evening, very respectful, quite young, very on the ball, but you could hear in his voice the frustration. And if you would allow, Mr Mayor, I'd like to read you his email. And he says, I've lived in Lyndhurst for 8 years now, and during that time I've witnessed the Cranbourne line becoming increasingly unreliable. The Monash Freeway is practically unusable, and our train service is relentlessly incompetent at delivering reasonable services, and I'm finding it very difficult to get to and from work from my area. He lives in Lyndhurst. I have even recently considered moving, however, prefer not to take this option. Well, we all know it's expensive, and why should he have to move? Metro Trains continues to cancel and delay trains, and to add salt to the wounds, when they are running a late service, they will go one step further and kick its paying passengers off at either Dandenong or Richmond Station, just so it can make it from point A to point B on a scheduled time. We also know of trains that overrun the stations and don't stop. They keep going to keep, we presume, to keep time. They are too quick and too casual about dropping the ball and kicking people off the train just because their drivers can't make it to each station on time. For years, Metro has relied on excuses such as faulty equipment or signalling issues. However, I fail to see how this can occur every day. As stated to them several times, if something in my house breaks, I fix it. Why can't the same be expected of them? Another point to make is before 7 a.m. every day they send out notifications advising customers of how their services have been disrupted, and he emphasises every day. If I went around my office advising staff that I was incompetent at my job, I'd be fired within a week. However, Metro isn't embarrassed by its own shortcomings. One just has to sign up to the Metro app to experience the sheer volume of excuses as to why the trains can't deliver Cranbourne passengers to their destinations on time. Cranbourne is by far the worst performing line in the Metro train service, and nothing is done to fix it. If anyone fair evades, they have spent time and money on ensuring they catch that. Sorry, he's saying that the Metro trains catch the evaders. However, if Metro trains do the wrong thing by their customers, no one is around to penalise them. Recently, Metro inconvenienced its paying customers to raise the tracks to elevate traffic congestion, to alleviate traffic congestion, which is great news for traffic on the road, but bad news for the public transport commuters as it hasn't improved the line one bit. Since being advised to use other train lines or catch their buses during this period, they have repaid their customers by not delivering their services daily. There's not a day that goes by that I can't travel to and from home peacefully without having to deal with Metro not caring about Cranbourne customers. And by that I think he's frustrated with the disruption. Metro constantly falls back on its no compensation policy, which they created themselves to ensure that they don't have to pay for their mistakes. However, it's time we got something back. I'm constantly missing appointments and commitments. I'm constantly having to be strategic with how I get to and from work, and I'm constantly paying money for my life to be ruined as Metro actions, or lack of, are ruining my personal and professional commitments, causing me and thousands of others great distress, and all because I travel on the Cranbourne line. I could be lenient if they were a new business and trying to get things right. However, they are an old, experienced business and get worse by the day. So now involving my council representative to see if we can do something about it, as I would like to take action against Metro trains. Well, the action that we can take as a council is respectfully write to the Minister and ask if she could look into this and investigate. Now, according to this young gentleman, he's done his homework, and Cranbourne is noted to be the worst performing train line in Victoria, and I believe we deserve better. Why on earth should the residents of Lynbrook and Lyndhurst and Cranbourne and broader areas, now Clyde and Cranbourne East, be impacted in this way? We need a better service. This train, I might add, not only is it unreliable, but it does not run a full express. You've got to either get off at Dandenong, Noble Park, somewhere like that, wait for another train in order to get an express train. And that can add on to your trip as well. So I think we do, in fact I know we deserve better, and so does the resident from Lyndhurst. So I put forward this recommendation to my fellow councillors and hope that we get a response very soon and we get this train line fixed.
Thank you, Councillor Stubble. Any questions or dissent on the matter? Councillor Rosario.
I actually want to rise in support of this. Mr Mayor, everyone here knows that, yeah, it's an are you aware? And are you aware, and I'm sure you are, but if you're not, I drive along the Monash every day to go into the city for work, because as councillors, this is not a full-time position for us. For those who don't know, this is something that we do because we want to do it to help our community. So we have day jobs, and I travel to the city. The reason why I drive, Mr Mayor, down the Monash is for that reason up here. So Councillor Stapleton has struck a nerve with me on this, because, and the community is feeling the same pinch. And I'm not going to be political with this, because this is about being practical. This is cause and effect, Mr Mayor. So we have new housing estates popping up all over the place in the city of Casey. It's rapid. Conservation Advisory Committee went on a tour last year in December, and we saw rapid development, new housing estates, new roads. The problem we didn't have, and it was a problem, was that we didn't have public transport to match that growth. Reliable public transport, Mr Mayor, so there needs to be investment in our public transport system by whoever gets in the government. they need to look at this, because if we don't have reliable public transport, our only option is to go on the road and drive to get to where we need to go. If we do that, our roads are clogged up because people have no alternative. If you gave us an alternative, if the government gave us that alternative, then we would be able to have a choice. And I would probably take public transport because it's cheaper for me to do that as well, Mr. Mayor. And I wouldn't have to spend money on fuel, wear and tear on the car. So I would love to support this, because this is important for us, especially in Cranbourne East as well, who Australia's fastest growing suburb, to be able to get that sort of support down the Cranbourne line. And I think that's important. So well done, Councillor Stapleton. Let's see what happens.
Thank you, Councillor Rosario. Is there any you want to make a comment from Mr. Dalton?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. You might recall at the last council meeting, the council chose to write to the Minister for Public Transport, congratulating them on the current state government, congratulating them on the allocation of monies towards the preparation works, the duplication of the Cranbourne line. So we could that's important that we indicate that. Also along the same lines, this highlights the need for that, and it's quite appropriate the council indicate this to them as well. And so we'll pick up both those. Just to remind the council that there's been a positive move forward, and we want to recognise that. But also, this is the reason why the council is advocating for that additional funding as part of its Commit to Casey campaign.
Thank you very
Councillor
much. Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Dalton. Yes, agreed. But when I was speaking with the resident, he was very clear that these were operational matters that weren't necessarily, yes, the congestion and level crossing removals and all of that, but he was very clear that these are issues that have been ongoing for at least a couple of years, and he can't understand why it's not just one issue, it's just so many multiple issues that have resulted in them having delays every day.
Are you aware?
Yeah, it's literally just in relation to what Mr. Dalton has said as well. So when I spoke as well, look, I acknowledge everything Mr. Dalton has just said about the positive nature of what we've been given in terms of a promise to duplicate the lines.
No.
Haven't they promised?
No, they have not.
Oh.
There's no commitment.
Then what were we just talking about?
No, there's been a there has been money allocated for planning. There has been no commitment, no promise, and no time set.
Okay, yeah, well, then that was going to be my point anyway, which is planning is nice, Mr. Mayor, but what we need is a time frame and actual commitment. I hope this letter actually triggers a response that says, look, we've got money for planning, but here is some dates that we can start to put down and start to look forward towards, because we can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rosario. Is there any dissent on the matter? Then that is carried. Are there any other items of urgent business for this evening? Councillor Rosario.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's actually in relation to safety at a school crossing at Pound Road, which is something I discussed a little bit
Moved by
earlier.
Councillor Rosario, seconded by Councillor Smith. Any dissent on it being admitted to urgent business? No, then it's admitted. Would you like to put a recommendation up?
Yes, and I'll make this one quick, Mr. Mayor, because we've talked about it earlier. Point number 1, please, that council officers urgently investigate the safety issues at Pound Road, Hampton Park school crossings. That's on both sides of the road, mind you. In light of recent near misses, comma, particularly issues with visibility and speed of motorists, and visibility of pedestrians using the crossing, comma, and suggests interim safety measures that will safeguard pedestrians until the installation of the signalised crossing further down. Signalised crossing further down Pound Road, anticipated in November 2018. Point number 2, please, that a report come back to Council in June.
Just before you get a second, Councillor Rosario, the school crossings in light of recent near misses doesn't say of who or what. of pedestrians, of by
yeah.
traffic, or
Yes.
near misses of pedestrians?
Or near, what's a better word for that then? I want to allude to incidents, essentially. So,
Misses of pedestrians?
yeah, well, why don't we just say pedestrians?
Near misses of pedestrians by traffic.
Yeah. Near misses of pedestrians, yes, by traffic, thank you. Or vehicles, would be either or. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
Can I get a seconder, please?
moved by Councillor Rosario, seconded by Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I discussed this at fairly great length earlier. The great thing about our online broadcast is that the council officer who had the knowledge was actually watching and text messaged me the details of my question earlier about when is that crossing going in, which was really great because I needed that information. That's apparently anticipated for November 2018, so that's about 6 months away, Mr. Mayor. But in the interim, given the situation with the near misses and those trucks basically slamming on brakes, going off the road and missing the pedestrians by just meters, or the crossing guard as well, I'd like to ask council officers to please look into interim measures. Interim because I'm advised that the crossing will be moved to the signalised crossing further down Pound Road, where we discussed earlier near the, near the seniors crossing. So if we can just safeguard that area, or at least look at the options for that for the next 6 months, then we will hopefully have something a lot safer in November. But I don't think we should wait. 6 months is a long time and things could happen.
I'll just say something, then I'll come back to you. Before, Councillor Rosario, we're writing to advocate around this road before, and now we're asking the officers to go out and make a report. Wouldn't it be better to have an officer's report to back up our advocacy?
Well, the advocacy, so I can see where you're coming with this.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what I'm trying to do here is, number one, the advocacy from the previous item was about the speed. And I referenced the incident that occurred at this crossing. But specifically, just for this crossing, I feel that we need to safeguard the people who use it in the short term, because that particular issue will be improved because of the signalised crossing that's going in. I still think that speed is a factor though, and even with that signalised crossing, people travelling down may still fly through that crossing, and I think that is a risk, and I still feel that that speed should drop down. But this is particularly just talking about how do we make it more visible and safer so people coming over that rise will have early warning. Hang on a second, there are children and someone standing in the middle of the road, instead of slamming their brakes and going off the road and hitting things. So I can understand where you're coming from, and I wanted to make sure that this was separate, so we don't get the issues confused with advocacy. So thank you.
Councillor Flannery.
Thank you. This is the Councillor Rosario. With the near misses, do the crossing supervisors, if they see a near miss while they're on duty, are they made to report it, or do they report it to the council officers that there was a near miss? And if there has been reports, how many reports have been put into council for near misses for that particular crossing?
Do you want to answer it, Ms. Bell?
Oh, well, I will just make one comment, then I'll pass on to Ms. Bell, if that's all right, Mr. Mayor. In answer to do they report, in this instance, my understanding is that on both occasions it was reported to the appropriate manager or supervisor for the crossing guard who was on duty at the time.
Ms. Bell, do you want to add to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, all of our school crossing supervisors are required to report any incidents, including near misses, through to us. We have an OC health and safety requirement that all of the crossings do that, and they all are trained in how to complete those forms.
Okay, so the reports that we have could go as part of the advocacy that Councillor Rosario was talking about before, in regard to this area and accidents?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we would be able to provide some detail. We wouldn't be able to provide copies of the actual reports.
Okay. Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For you, Ms. Bell, how many reports have you had from that particular crossing that there's been near misses?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I haven't received any reports in recent months.
Okay, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And a question to Ms Bell. In terms of the policy or procedure, and Mr Mayor, what I'm trying to get at here is, it seems to me, Mr Mayor, there are a number of crossings across the entire Casey where we have issues that Councillor Rosario has raised today. And to me, it raises potentially a policy or procedure issue rather than it coming to council every single time. So is there a policy or procedure in place currently in council that so many near misses trigger an automatic letter or an automatic writing to VicPol or Vic Roads? So I'm thinking potentially the report might develop something like that if it doesn't already exist. So maybe before I talk, I'll ask whether that exists.
Through you, Mr Mayor, there is regular reviews of all of the incidents that occur in any work site, not just on school crossings. We do review those reports to identify where there are particular trends and actions that we can undertake to mitigate those risks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bell. Anybody got any questions for Ms Bell? Otherwise, I'll let her sit down. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or dissent on the matter? Well, that's carried. Thank you. Are there any other items of urgent business for this evening? No? Can I please get a mover and a seconder to move that council resolve itself in a closed council and resume after a 5-minute adjournment? Moved by Councillor Stapleton, seconded by Councillor Rowe. Any dissent? That is carried. Thank you.